What are tolerance, inclusion, communication, and activism? Sure, each term has a definition that we can find online, but regardless, each of us has an intuitive idea of what these words mean and how we can use them in our everyday conversations. It would be a useless and even a downright boring task then to make a compilation of videos describing their definitions as mentioned in dictionaries. It likewise seems counterproductive to list our interpretations of the terms, for there seems to be no debate around their meaning. Social science is a science which is infinitely complicated by the first word in its name, social. While inclusion seems straightforward, it's when we begin applying the term to real-life scenarios that things become complicated. Is it inclusion, for example, to allow the entrance of immigrants without protest, but to have virtually no contact with them in our daily lives? Topics such as tolerance, inclusion, communication, activism are not as simple as our definitions might be, and in fact, they take on meaning only once they are rooted in social contexts. Social contexts are rich with historical patterns and influences, organized within legal structures, and are constantly evolving. When Banksy spray-painted a mural of Steve Jobs with a bag hung over his shoulder and a computer in his hand on a wall within the famous Calais refugee camp in France, he was not simply decorating the walls. Instead, he was commenting on how society perceives immigrants. Who is an immigrant? What are they worth? Steve Jobs was the son of an immigrant from Syria. To further complicate the story, social contexts are constantly evolving, and so too are the practical expressions of tolerance, inclusion, communication, and activism. For Rosa Parks, simply sitting on the front seat of a bus was a shocking method of activism in fighting against segregation. Today, such an action doesn't mean much within our European context, precisely because the context is different. It's by understanding how tolerance, inclusion, communication, and activism are not, can, and cannot be expressed that we can begin to understand how social inclusion and equity happen in our democratic societies. To understand these topics, we cannot look away from real examples, rooted in real contexts and experienced by real people today. Therefore, this course seeks to explore how tolerance, inclusion, communication, and activism are present in our daily lives. By compiling a set of themes covered by our participants, our course allows viewers to explore the value of these terms, how we act upon them, how they can be harnessed, and how we can promote them. It approaches these questions through topics developed by the project's participants and organized into 3 modules. Module 1, entitled, You Are What You Think, How Inclusion, Tolerance, and Communication Start With Us, seeks to explain these topics through the perspective that we as individuals are agents of change. In this module, our participants guide us through the distinctions between inclusion and tolerance, explaining to us how exclusion looks and feels and how we can help promote inclusion and tolerance. Module 2, entitled Culture or Culture, How to Avoid a Culture of Negligence, Oppression, and Inequality, widens the scope to consider questions relating to our culture. Here, our participants discuss how our culture excludes, what can be done to change cultural patterns, what appropriation and appreciation are, and why we should appreciate the value of cultural diversity. Finally, Module 3, entitled Global Citizens, takes our scope as far as possible, considering globally relevant topics. Here, our participants target the difficult topics of human rights, migration, and colonialism. By doing so, they explore what human rights mean for us, why and how they should be respected and upheld. They explore also how specific migration patterns can impact on how society approaches tolerance, inclusion, communication, and activism. Finally, they explore the topic of colonialism, drawing lessons from the past to better inform our future.